So my name's Marie Arymar, and I'm a wellbeing coach working primarily with young people. And I'm also the stepmother of two grown-up boys now. And so I wanted to talk to you about revision, which I'll explain that word in a second, because it's something that's close to many people's hearts, especially at the moment with exam time. And I'm accompanied by Isabel.
Yeah, so I'm Isabel. I did a peer mentoring course in school where this brilliant book was included, written by Marie, which it was a really brilliant peer mentoring course that took over 12 hours, I believe, which it was really helpful and it resonated with me, which I'm sure it would do with a lot of teenagers my age. So it really helped in school time.
And you're 15, aren't you? So you've got your big exams
next year.
So
yeah,
in the UK, Isabel is in year 10, and that's a really important year going into the final year before the big exams. And I just wanted to take a moment to explain the word revision to people who might be watching in the States, because I know that that word doesn't really exist over there. So the word revision is the period of time where our students are really studying hard for their finals, what you would call finals. So it's the period of intense study to be successful in those important exams. And for me, the word revision conjures up some really strange feelings. And that might be the same for you and your friends.
Yeah, definitely. So the word revision in friendship groups throughout our whole year and the next years and year below us even, it's a word that nobody really likes to hear about. You hear about it and you get all these negative connotations that go with it. It's not something that anybody looks forward to.
No. And there can be so much anxious thinking and so much conflict at home and so many kind of limiting beliefs attached to this whole period of studying hard and revision, can't there? And we want to kind of dispel that. So, has revision become the R word? Has it become a dirty word that nobody dares speak? And that's really the point of what we're doing today. And for the first half, maybe about half an hour, we're going to talk to young people, we're going to talk to the students about going through this process of what is the R word. And then in the second half, we're going to talk to parents, because it is as difficult and challenging for many parents as it is for the students. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, it really is.
So when we actually think about revision, it's just a word. That's it. It's just a word, but it's a word that we give so much power to. So, Isabel, if I said to you, you're going to go on holiday to Ibiza, so you're 15, not quite yet, but you're going to go on holiday to Ibiza with your mates, and I want you to prepare for that.
Okay. So you take things to get there, so passport and flight passes, anything you need there. You'd need clothes, so shorts, shoes, t-shirts, toiletries, so you actually stay clean while you're there. I think that's about it.
Okay. And how easy was that to come up with that list of preparation?
Very easy.
Doesn't
take much thinking.
Doesn't take much thinking about. Okay, so what if you needed to go to youth club? You go to youth club, don't you?
Yeah.
So you're going to go to youth club. What do you need to do to prepare?
Get ready, take phone, purse, and I think that's probably about it. You don't need an awful lot there.
Okay. So isn't that interesting that Isabel can come up with a way of being prepared and come up with a list of things that she needs for going on holiday or going to youth club easily, just like that? So what about if I started talking about the revision word? What happens then to you?
Then you start thinking about how much time it's going to take, how much you've got to do, what you've actually got to do for it, and how much thinking actually goes into it.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because if we could just take out the word revision and put in the word preparing or prepare for, suddenly it all becomes easier.
Yeah.
And we have all these options. So this isn't a session where we tell people how to revise, because as we'll explore, I'm not sure that that's really even possible, because people will only do what they feel is right in any moment. But tell me, what do you do when you are preparing for a test or exams? What kind of things might be your go-to things that you do?
So I'll use things like going online or flashcards or making posters and mind maps, which can go up everywhere and anywhere to help me remember things.
Me too.
And talking to friends and revising with them. Preparing with them is a much better way of doing it than doing it on your own.
Yeah, right. I didn't actually learn that until I went to university, and I went to university quite late. I went in my mid-30s, and I used mind maps, and I had them everywhere in my kitchen, and I copied a mind map over and over and over until I could just do it like that. And there was my essay at the start of my exam. I saw the question, drew out my mind map, bang. I just worked around it. And I used group study, but you have to be quite dedicated, right?
Yeah, definitely. Going off task is so easy. You have to be very dedicated to it.
But that becomes more fun. So when you're with people who are dedicated and you're talking about a topic, it suddenly doesn't feel as onerous as if you were doing revision.
Yeah, it makes it a more relaxed environment to do it, and you don't feel like you're sat down doing boring work that no one wants to do. It becomes something that can be more enjoyable whilst you're actually still getting the work done.
Right, because that's the point, isn't it? When we think of the word revision or intense study, to me, I think of sitting in a quiet room with no distractions for at least 3 hours without blinking.
Yeah, it's not somewhere anybody would want to be.
No.
You want to make it enjoyable, because otherwise, if you don't enjoy doing something, you're not going to do as well at it as if you actually enjoyed it.
Absolutely. So what gets in the way of that then? We're back to this R word, this dirty word. We're back to what happens when we think about the word revision. And so moving on a little bit, we have some real go-to limiting beliefs, it seems. We all seem to have them. It's very natural for us for these thoughts to pop up over and over and over. I mean, what kind of things do you hear your friends or other people you know who've sat through these exams? What do you hear them say?
Saying things like, I don't really know how to revise, I haven't been taught by teachers, the school isn't helping me, the school won't teach me well enough. And things like, I'm going to fail and I can't do this, when actually they can do it. It's in their head that they can't.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I mean, that is so true, isn't it? That it's in our heads that we can't do it. It's our own limiting belief. And so many young people who I work with, maybe they're older, so maybe they're at college, or I've heard people who are in work say, the school never taught me to revise. The school were rubbish. It's the school's fault because nobody ever taught me. And I would challenge that and say, how can we be taught to do something that is only right for us in the moment that it's right?
Yeah, it's such an independent thing as well. Different things are going to work for everybody. They can't tailor how they teach you to every single person. It would just be impossible.
Yeah. And I remember actually a young man saying to me that he used to get his summary cards, his flashcards, his summary notes, and he would record into his phone. So he would speak his notes into his phone. And then when he was on the bus or walking anywhere, he would listen to himself. Or when he went to sleep, he would have his headphones in. Now that wouldn't work for me because I'm really visual and I want the mind maps with lots of colour. But do people ever talk about how they do their revision or how they do their study? Do any of your friends ever just chat about what works for them and what doesn't? Or is it like a closed subject?
It's a subject that pops up every now and again, mainly when it comes to the time when other years have got their big GCSEs or finals coming up.
Yeah, right.
And they're trying to talk. The conversation will normally start about how nervous we are about them.
Yeah.
And then we go into things like how mind maps might work for somebody, but flashcards are best for somebody else. And we always try and think of ideas for each other and how we can help each other. And it's such an individual thing that somebody else could say something, and then that idea just, it makes so much more sense in your head. It's something you can then think, oh, I might actually do that. It makes more sense. So it helps having those conversations with people because you get so many more ideas from it.
Yeah. And do you think it's common for friendship groups to have those kind of conversations? Or do you think that generally people avoid the word so much they don't even want to talk to their mates?
Yeah, I think whenever the word revision comes up, everyone kind of backs into their own corner a little bit. Nobody wants to talk about it or acknowledge that it's there. Obviously, it's going to be, but if people think that if you don't talk about it, it doesn't need to be an issue to be addressed. It's just, it stays there not being spoken of.
Yeah.
When it varies between people, but I think speaking about it actually can help people.
Yeah. It's true, isn't it? It becomes a dirty word, so we avoid even talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think there's a sense of people feeling maybe a little bit like failures, even if they're talking about it but not doing it. And it kind of, the thing that's just coming to my mind is on our peer mentoring, we were talking about having a really busy head, thought storms, noise, big brass band, and how in that moment when we've got such a busy head, our kind of options reduce down. Yeah. And in the end, it's like, well, I'm just not going to even do any of it because I don't know, I can't.
Yeah.
But it sounds to me in your friendship groups, you're listening to each other, you're having fun talking about it, you're open to the opportunities of how you might do it differently. So perhaps you're coming from it from more clarity and less busy head. Does that sound that might be right for your situation?
Yeah, I think so. So addressing the situation of preparing, I think it makes it easier for yourself because you're not going through it alone. Nobody is. So talking about it to other people, it can clear that part of your head that there are other people there to help you and that you don't have to sit there and do it all by yourself because there's people there who will probably feel the same about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we make so many assumptions like, oh, well, it's easy for them because they know what they're doing. And invariably they don't, whoever they are, they don't know. They're having the same anxious thoughts.
Yeah.
So it's recognizing that those thoughts are natural. They're natural to us while we're studying for exams. They're natural for us when everybody's talking about the importance of being successful and the importance of getting 9s or A's or whatever the grade is. And the pressure that comes from those thoughts, which naturally are coming and coming and coming.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. We're being human beings. We're just coping as best we can in the moment of this challenging time, right? And when we can see that, when we can go, oh, okay, so I'm not doing anything wrong, or I'm not being left behind, or I'm not failing, or I'm not, then we can literally step out of our own way. We can be kinder to ourselves. We can have those options start to open up. And then we can start to maybe even ask for some help, whether it be from a parent or from our mate who's good at that subject, whoever it is.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So then just wanted to move on for the last little bit of this section where we're talking to young people, to the students, and just talk about where that leads. You know, when we feel open to new things and open to the possibility that we're not rubbish and we're not failing and we're not, it's not the fact that nobody's taught us. It's maybe the fact that we're closing our options down and down. Then, we can start to ask the key people for help. So we can ask our teachers, we can ask our friends, we can ask our family members, and we can ask our parents. And for my experience was we got to the point where we couldn't even talk to our children, my stepsons, about what revision was happening. It just ended up being, yeah, I've done it at school. And I don't think that we did anything wrong, and I don't think they did anything wrong. In fact, they got the grades that they hoped to get for them to progress on. But the ability to have that nurturing conversation was lost, even though we really felt we had the door open. I'm not certain that we did. And the possibility that the student, the young person, could say, Mum, Dad, carer, whoever, I need this. I need that. Could you help me with this? That's where the opportunities to really be able to have an environment where we can explore what does work, whether it be mind maps or whatever. That's the place that it can happen. From that place of clarity and calm and knowledge that we're all okay. We're doing the best we can.
Yeah, definitely. And it's communication. And I really think that talking to other people and even just knowing that they're there, it clears that space in your mind that you're not on your own. There's so many other people out there to help you. You're never going to go on your own with it. There's so many people. There's so many things you can do to help other people and help yourself. It's just about knowing there's other people there.
Yeah. And knowing that revision, we're not taught how to revise or how to do intense study because there is no one way to do it.
Yeah.
That's why we're not taught it. So let's go out and explore how we can find ways to make it interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's lovely. What's going through my mind now is how I felt when I was at school, and I studied very hard. I loved reading, but I had dyslexia, and I was determined to get to medical school. And so I was, I had to do this work and I had to do it. And I didn't give myself a break at all. I just studied and studied and studied. And I know now that taking a break is a good thing, but I'm not sure you could have convinced me at the time. Yeah.
But when we can see that there are other ways which can be a little bit more fun, but just as effective, then perhaps you might not have felt you needed actual breaks. You were just maybe mixing up how you did it.
Yeah, and I wasn't having fun. I definitely wasn't having fun. I mean, it was so inefficient when I look back at it now because I didn't have fun at all. It was just, I've got to do the. In fact, it was the opposite. I actually made sure that I didn't have fun. That I had a belief that if I had fun, I would things would go wrong, and so I was listening to some thought that told me and of course that thought hadn't got a clue, didn't know, but it seemed like it did at the time. It seemed to me that thought knew what it was talking about, and that if I didn't do that, then things would go wrong. Yeah. And there was one other thing as well. The thing about talking to other people. So I thought I was convinced that there wasn't anybody that I could talk to. My parents had never done what I was doing and wouldn't understand what I was doing. And teachers were not, I don't know what they're like now, but they weren't that approachable then. And so I wasn't even sure, and my friends weren't doing the same as me either. So I wasn't sure who I could talk to. And I was so convinced by all these thoughts that I needed to do it this way and I had to do it all myself. And yeah, which is pretty hard going, I have to say.
Really hard going. But you got there. And who knows, you know, that was right for you in that moment. You know, that's the way you did it. And, you know, it's what we feel is by being able to have the wisdom and the clarity and to know that there are more options, I think, and having the opportunity to ask others is great, other than feeling that I'm on my own with my own failure and my future crumbling around me, when of course it isn't, because it's all an undecided equation, you know, it's all unknown. So yeah,
definitely. That was one of the big things as well, because in my mind, it had to be this way. It had to be this way, and that's the way it got to be. And I had no idea that there were like a million other possibilities that I could have just as good effect in the world and have just as much and probably more fun, actually. But yeah, now I can see how many more there are. But at the time, I was so limiting myself so much. Yeah. So I think it's great what you're doing. And I think that's really helpful, really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'd like the opportunity now to talk to parents or carers, people in the same house who are going through the same experience, but from the other side. So we'd love to talk now to them, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
So I'd like to just drop in again about the experience of our boys doing their study, their revision, but from the point of view of the parent or step parent in my part, you know, watching their friends plan to go to medical school or to become physicists or lawyers, and knowing what they wanted to do at college and having a path. And actually, I also come from further education, from the pastoral side of 16 to 19-year-olds. And I know how challenging it is when you don't know, more often than not, you don't know what your path's going to be. But for us, some of these friends were on a path that they seemed really confident with. And we were spending the whole time going, oh my goodness, but if they don't try and go for A's, then they're not going to be able to go on and do A-levels. And if they don't go on and do A-levels, then what are they going to do? And oh, maybe they'll do a BTEC. And actually, I've taught BTEC, so I'm a great BTEC advocate, and thinking, okay, well, BTECs are fine. And then they could go on and do this. It's like, oh, but they don't know if they want to do that. But the thing was, we were getting caught up in our story, and it wasn't their story. So we were comparing the boys to our friends' children. And we had no right to do that. We were so caught up in what we thought was best for them. And actually, they went on their own path, both those boys. They got the grades that they wanted, apart from one of them missed the maths, and he retook it in the November and he nailed the maths. So they did what they needed to do for what they wanted, and they went on. They both got great jobs. They're both happy men. So did we need to have all that anxiety as parents? And the conversation, this half of this webinar is as important as to the young people. And we really wanted to start off by saying to parents and carers, the message here is, check your own oxygen mask. Put your own oxygen mask on securely before you start putting on somebody else's. Look at what's going on for you here. And is it what's going on for them? Or are you making assumptions? And that's not a critical judgment. I'm not coming at this critically in any way. I'm trying to share an experience. And Isabel's going to be talking about what it's like, even though from a very supportive family, what it might be like for the young person who might not be feeling listened to. So we really wanted to look at, are your desires for your child your child's desires? Are your hopes for them their own hopes? Have they even decided what their hopes are? Have you decided their future path, or have they? Or if they don't know their future path, are you throwing solutions at them? And is that helping right now? And the question, if they don't get the grades, are you going to love them any less? So coming back to the R word, what does it mean to you, and what does it mean to your young person, your child? So were you made to study for at least 3 hours in a block without, any distractions? I mean, the difference between Isabel and I, we didn't have, I'm going to show my age now. We didn't have social media. We didn't have mobile phones. I did have the radio, and I had a record player with vinyl. Do you know vinyl?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay, I don't feel so bad now. So that's what would distract me. Or my friends would come to the house and literally call for me. There wouldn't be any other way of setting up. So I'd go, but how can I revise? My friends are at the door. It would be something like that. So when we were revising, it's very different to now. So whose expectation is what is kind of my question. Are you in a completely separate reality to your young person with regard to those expectations? And how's that working out? Or how did it work out if you've already been through it? So Isabel, we were talking about a partnership between the young person and the parent carer. Are you happy to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so I think something very important between carer and child is the communication between both, because if the carer is open to talking, then chances are so will the child. They're going to be they're going to feel much more welcome and open to asking you for help and questions. And the communication between both is so important, because it's going to help them along the way. Maybe they don't need help, but knowing that they have help there and that somebody can talk to them and help them through it, it's a comforting feeling for everybody. Even if they don't need help, it's going to help them in the long run. And it doesn't have to be an instant thing. It's having the communication. It can build over time, and it's going to help out so much more than even just asking them questions like if they've had enough food or sleep, or just the simple things that they need are going to show so much help to them, and they're going to feel so much more comfortable.
Yeah, and I think what you're pointing to is that ability to have that real deep, open listening. And we're going to talk about that in a short while. But, you've really hit something there. If I remember that if I were trying to talk to my mum or my stepdad about if I was struggling with some studying, and they were going to just have a go at me or tell me I should be doing it differently, or I haven't done it enough, or whatever they were going to come up with, then I don't even want to go and ask them.
Yeah.
I don't even want to go and talk to them.
Yeah.
Because I kind of don't even want to get into it with them.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just having that, it's being welcome to the subject that makes a difference, because nobody really enjoys doing revision. So if they're open to talking about it and they don't just shut you down when you try and talk about it, then they're going to help you so much more, because if they're not open to the conversation, you're not going to be either. So it's going to make it harder on yourself.
Yeah, and you've reminded me of our peer mentoring training, and we were sort of talking about that deep listening in our peer mentoring, but we were talking about not being fixers, having somebody on our side who isn't going to throw solutions at us. And so when we were doing deep listening, we were helping them to find the answer, won't we? As opposed to throwing out, well, you should do this, you should do that. And I think as somebody from the parent side or the step-parent side, it's so easy to be throwing those out. And actually from a teacher's point of view, because this is just as relevant to teachers, from my time of teaching 16 to 19-year-olds, it's like, well, just do this, do that. Have you considered this? And and that's kind of not what you're talking about right now.
Yeah. So you don't necessarily have to have a solution to it. You do just need that comforting feeling of them being there, and that if you need it, you can be helped, but you don't have to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we don't have a really open partnership, that's okay too. Because whatever's happened in the parent or carer or teacher's day might mean that they're in a heady space and they're not able to be open in that exact moment that you know, so sometimes, you know, we're like a roller coaster, aren't we? And maybe, you know, the young person might be thinking, oh, now's a really good time to talk to my mum, but actually it's not a really good time, you know. So it's about being loving and supportive and open for both people to be able to have that conversation. And not every moment is going to be the right moment.
Yeah.
But the right moments are there because it's a partnership. And so sort of wanted to talk about taking the me out of it. Rudy Kennard talks about taking the me out of the word meaning. You know, what's going on? What's the meaning for all of this? Well, if we take the me out of it, you know, if the young person, if your child is struggling with their studying or they're preparing for their tests right now, that's not your fault or anything that you've done. It's just what happens to be going on right now. And maybe that's the moment to have an open, deep listening conversation. It's not a personal thing. If the young person is struggling with how they are preparing for their exams, they're not setting themselves up to fail on purpose. They're not setting themselves up to destroy their life and the future of everybody in the family on purpose. It's the place that they're at in that moment. They're doing the best they can in that moment. And it kind of leads me to go on a little bit about our own limiting beliefs. You know, what are we actually seeing in our child? You know, are we actually recognizing the small steps that are happening? Are we recognizing when maybe there is a little bit of group study together and it's been really successful? Are we celebrating that? You know, I just had I've got a client who's 17 and she's actually retaking her GCSE maths right now. So I think today is exam number 2. She's got one more exam next week. And we've been doing some work together. And after and she really says things like, I hate maths, I can't do maths, I'm going to fail, my life's over, kind of thing. And she came back after the first exam and she said, actually, it was all right. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And her mum was saying, oh, I'm so worried and I haven't seen any changes. It's like, have you not seen any evolving here at all? And she said, well, she did say that her first maths exam wasn't so bad. And it's like, yeah, that's a big thing. That's a big thing to set her up for exam number 2 and exam number 3. So are you recognizing those small steps that are happening? Do you know best how to help your young person with their study? Like Isabel said, do you know what they need? Have you had that conversation? Or is it time now for that conversation before it's too late? And when I say before it's too late, I don't mean that in a critical way. I mean it in time to get those things in place so that some kind of study can happen, however it's going to happen. So these open discussions that we hope will happen are based on love and compassion and openness and not being judgmental, and you know, from a true place of wisdom and clarity and clear thinking, without that heady brass band. And do you feel comfortable talking about, you know, those 4 elements of deep listening to enable a conversation to happen?
Yeah, So I think obviously not everybody is going to feel open and welcome and comfortable doing it, but it's about knowing how much you can do and how even just doing the little things can still make a bigger difference than you think it might. So even just talking about just little things every day can make you so much more comfortable in the long run. And it's going to make the people around you more comfortable as well, because they'll start thinking, oh, like they obviously do want to speak to us, and we can start talking to them about more.
And so how do you think, if you wanted your parent to listen to you, do you remember when we talked about things in peer mentoring about not having any distractions, those kind of things? Would you be able to talk to those?
Yeah. So I think the not having any distractions, like when you're preparing for tests or literally anything, you don't have to shut yourself in a room with no windows and be completely silent. It's about having, you could have music on, but music that's not going to distract you, and it's knowing what kind of distractions you need to take away. So your friends being on the phone to you while you're preparing, or just little things that could possibly distract you. It's about knowing that you can those don't have to be there, and you can decide which to listen to.
Because sometimes parents will say, you can't have any distractions at all. So when you're having that conversation, you want them to hear you without them having all their own opinions.
Yeah, because as we said, it's different for everybody. So somebody might find studying with music on so relaxing and that it helps them, whereas somebody else finds that if there's no music on, they work so much better. It's about the independence of the person, and it's something that carers, it would be great if they understood, because instead of stereotyping it and saying all children need to have a silent room, there's no phone, there's no nothing, whereas actually those things are there to help them. And it's about knowing what your child needs, not what every other child needs instead.
Yeah, because there comes back our own limiting beliefs or our own opinions about how we feel as parents, carers, that it should happen. So sitting together then, so parent, child, student, person who's studying, it's about having a space where you can really listen openly, not have any judgments. So for the parent to let all those old judgments go. Well, in my day, this is how we did it, that kind of thing. And then I used to find that my stepdad used to say, well, I know better. I know better. This is how you should do it. And that to me isn't deep listening either. It might be how you did it, stepdad, but it isn't how I want to do it. And the last one, that I wanted to come back to is one we already touched on, which is about not throwing out solutions, not trying to fix our child, not trying to say, I'll get tutors in. Maybe getting tutors in is the right thing to do, but is it the right thing for that young person? So again, this 17-year-old I just mentioned, she was given a tutor who is actually an older student. She isn't a teacher of maths. And the 17-year-old didn't want to work with her because she didn't have a lot of rapport with her. So it was kind of, the parent thought they were doing the right thing, but the child actually didn't want it. So that didn't come from a place of nurturing discussion and open listening. And, the parent who wanted the tutor was doing what they felt was exactly the right thing with love. And the young person was doing the best they could with love, but it wasn't right together. And so lastly then, thinking about what would be the kind of conversation to sort of recap of everything we've talked about. It's like, what is the anxious thinking? What is the fear? Are there options? What's going on in the young person's head? Do you need somebody else to come in and help with this conversation? Is it something basic like space in the house? Is it something that you can be doing that suits them, that would be really helpful, like actually invigilating a timed paper? You know, that's a real help, not by doing it for them or looking over their shoulder, but actually saying, right, start now, time's up, kind of thing. Is it actually testing questions? So I was walking on the river, I lived near the river, and there was a woman and it was obviously her son, maybe A-level age. He's talking, she's walking along looking at a book. And I thought, aha, she's testing him. Lovely, they're on a walk together, doing it together. So they're finding a way. There's, you know, maybe it's helping find YouTube channels. Maybe it's going in and talking to the teacher. Who knows what it is? I have no idea. But it's only really finding it out through this conversation, without distractions, without judgment, without I know betters, and without throwing out solutions, which we naturally do as parents because we want the best for our children. So I want to just close this now, unless there's anything that you want to say.
I think it's just the communication is the most important thing that you can have, and knowing that your child is completely different to every other child out there, and different things are going to work for them, and you've just got to be ready to help them in ways that they need, and knowing that, okay, maybe you're not always going to have a solution for it, but they don't always need it.
Nice. Yeah. And actually, for you, with your exam starting in November?
Yes.
Then those conversations now are actually helpful for you.
Yeah.
Those definitely. Conversations can be starting. They could start whenever, couldn't they? And then here's the last question for parents and carers. Even teachers, you know, if it all goes wrong, are you going to love them any less?
Yeah, beautiful. And I think that's really important for the students as well, to know if all goes wrong, are they still going to love me? Because that's quite often what they get into their head, that, oh, I've got to do this because they won't love me anymore if you know, well, I'm not good enough and I need to be good enough. And it's not. And actually, as you said, it seems like parents are putting pressure on to do things you don't want to do, but they're only doing it because they want the best for you. They want. I remember my dad being like that, saying, "Oh, you know, I don't want you to do this, and I don't want you to go to university to do something that's." And I was like, "Hang on a minute," and it was just I guess I was aware of having my own inner wisdom, but he wasn't. And he thought he'd got to fix it all for me, and he'd got to make it all right for me. And at the time, that felt like a not good pressure, and that he didn't love me. But actually, it was because he did love me that he was trying to do that. So, yeah. So there's a couple of questions that I've got, like, what is peer mentoring? You haven't said what that actually is. And okay. Yeah. And also just tell us a bit more about your book, please.
Oh, I'd love to. So I'm part of the group called Resilient Young Minds, which was all from a conference down in the southwest of England, the UK. And there's a whole movement in Devon and around the UK and globally where the message is, we are all okay. We are not broken. We have everything we need. And we really want that message out to as many young people as possible, that we have infinite well-being, unlimited well-being. And it's such a wonderful message. And so as part of the Resilient Young Minds work, we went to St. Peter's School in Exeter, and we talked to Lucy Hoare, the English teacher and also the mental health and wellbeing officer for the school. And she'd already been on wellbeing ambassador training in Devon, and we said, would you like us to come and work with some of your students? And she literally snapped our arm off. And she introduced us to 12 young people who are, I'm going to ask Isabel to take over in a second, but 12 young people, 7 year 7s and 5 year 10s. So in non-UK speak, that is 7, 11 to 12-year-olds and 5, 14 to 15-year-olds. And some of them were dignity ambassadors and some student leaders.
Yeah.
Can you take over?
Yeah. So the peer mentoring course came up in school and we were offered to take it. Started off not being too sure what it was about. We had reviews at the beginning I had one with Marie.
Like one-to-one, half an hour one-to-ones, yeah?
Yeah, to find out about us and about more of what the course was, basically. And then we had 3 sessions, which were all focused around one point for each session. And the whole course, it makes such a difference, because we spoke about how our heads can get so full of thoughts, and how we spoke about how we have our true self, which is always there, and it's a place of serenity, basically, where we're so calm and we're with ourselves and so happy. And it's about how fear and anxiety and worry can all cloud over that, but that it's constantly there. And this whole course, definitely for me anyway, it made such a difference in everyday life, knowing that there could be some issues, but they're going to go eventually. They're not always going to be there. And having the whole peer mentoring course, it's made it so much more easy to understand myself and to know how to not necessarily help myself, but just to know that it's going to be okay in the end, and that I don't have to be perfect, because there's always that perfect place of like true self always there, and that we're always ourselves. Like you're not going to change it. So just knowing that all those thoughts that you have are going to go away eventually. They're never going to stay there.
They're like clouds passing over the sun, aren't they?
Yeah. So it was a really insightful course to go on.
And the aim is that the year 7s are going into year 8, so they go into their next year. These guys go into year 11, which is the final year in the UK, and they will be able to peer mentor their fellow students. So the year 7s who are going up to the next year, they will be looking out for the new students into the secondary school, and also maybe doing some work with the school below in the primary school. And so we've had our 3 sessions of 4 hours each. We've got another one-to-one next week. And then we have a graduation ceremony with the school governors and lots of other invited dignitaries, where these guys will actually graduate and become peer mentors for their school. So it's for the school and it's for them. And Isabel just was so insightful, had so much wisdom, and we'd be trying to say something and Isabel would just say, "Oh, do you mean?" and just come out with something so perfect. It's like, yeah, what she said. So it was obvious for me to ask Isabel to come. And the second question was the book, which we read together, and it's called "Do You Want to Know a Secret?" And it's a small book, but it's got a big message, and it's for any age, but it's really great for younger people. And it can be bought from Amazon or from my website. But I really encourage people to just look at the message within it, and especially for children and parents, it's really generating some good, open, nurturing conversations at home with the book. Thank you.
So that's fantastic. Thank you very much. And the link to your book will be on our website at thesecretofeverything.com, and on your page, which there will be a link to underneath this video. And if anyone watching the playback has any questions or any comments, then just post those underneath the video too, and we'll get those through to both of you. And I think that's it for today then. Thank you so much for coming. That's been really, really helpful. And as I say, if anybody's got any questions, do let us know. This is part of the Secret of Everything live series. So there are more videos to watch too. And yes, so please do subscribe to the channel so that we get this message out to as many people as possible, as soon as possible. So thanks very much for coming along and doing that.
Okay.
Okay. Bye for now.